What if I told you that the history we all learned in school was really only half the story? Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're going to look right past the surface of history to uncover secret alter egos, cracked cold cases, and shadowy espionage. Because history is rarely just a neat collection of dates and well-known names. Often, the absolute most fascinating truths are hidden right in the margins, just waiting for us to piece the clues together. So today we are going on a journey through the invisible networks and hidden identities that actually shaped the modern world. Here is our agenda for today's Explainer. We'll be covering 4 hidden histories: Franklin's secret alter egos, solving a revolutionary cold case, hidden figures of Fords, and finally, deception in World War II. All right, let's jump right into part 1, Franklin's secret alter egos, the many faces of a founding father. When we think of Benjamin Franklin, we immediately picture this venerable, stoic statesman, right? But behind that very public persona was a brilliant master of disguise who manipulated literature to share radical ideas. He didn't just use pen names to hide his identity. He crafted entire flesh and blood personalities with incredibly rich backstories. Take Silence Doe Good, for example. Under this alias, Franklin wrote as a sharp-tongued, middle-aged widow who mercilessly mocked the elite establishment of Harvard University and the hypocrisy of the era. Or consider Richard Saunders, a supposedly poor, henpecked astrologer who became the beloved voice behind Poor Richard's Almanac. Franklin used aliases like Benevolus and Sidi Mehmet Ibrahim to navigate the really treacherous waters of public opinion, basically manipulating the early press with a level of sophistication we'd usually associate with a modern PR campaign. This quote really hits the nail on the head, as inventing these characters gave him the most freedom to say things he couldn't have otherwise said. It was essentially the ultimate 18th century loophole for free speech. Think about it. If Benjamin Franklin, the highly respected public figure, had openly published some of his more blistering satires or controversial political critiques, it could have completely ruined his diplomatic career. But by tossing these ideas into the public square through the voice of a fictional widow or an eccentric astrologer, he could spark fierce debate, float radical concepts, and dismantle his opponent's arguments completely risk-free. It was just a masterful, shadowy use of media manipulation that literally helped lay the intellectual groundwork for a revolution. Moving right along to part 2. Solving a revolutionary cold case, 250 years in the making. See, history isn't just something that happened way back in the past. It is an ongoing investigation, and sometimes the evidence has literally been buried right beneath our feet. Consider the story of John Pumphrey. He was just a teenager when he stepped up to enlist in the Continental Army in 1777, throwing himself right into the brutal crucible of the American Revolution. But for nearly 250 years, this young soldier was entirely lost to history. His sacrifice was reduced to an unmarked, forgotten grave. So, when archaeologists recently discovered his remains, it was a monumental find. But a skeleton alone doesn't give you a name, a hometown, or a story. To pull John Pumphrey out of the shadows, researchers had to do something entirely unprecedented. 20,000. That is the staggering number of DNA matches from living relatives that genetic genealogists had to sift through to finally identify him. The sheer scale of this scientific effort is absolutely mind-blowing. Researchers couldn't rely on dusty archival paper trails alone. Instead, they used cutting-edge genetic genealogy, painstakingly building out massive, complex family trees across multiple centuries. They tracked marriages, births, and migrations, cross-referencing this giant mountain of genetic data until every single branch converged on one specific missing teenager from 1777. And this is exactly why giving names back matters. Modern science is still unlocking the foundation of our nation. We aren't just passively reading textbooks anymore. We are actively giving names back to the people who sacrificed everything to build our world. It entirely reshapes how we view the past when we realize that modern, sterile laboratories are just as vital to history as any traditional archive. It proves that history is an active, relentless pursuit. And it really begs the question, if we can reach back centuries to find a lost teenager from 1777 today, whose incredible story might we uncover tomorrow? Okay, let's turn to part 3, Hidden Figures of Fords, looking past the presidential box. We all know the broad strokes of the tragic night of April 14, 1865 at Ford's Theater. But mapping out the physical spaces of the tragedy allows us to view the event through the eyes of the everyday people who were suddenly thrust into history. The chaos unfolded across 3 distinct locations. You have the bustling theater stage down below, the intimate state box with its red upholstery where the fatal shot was actually fired, and the somber Peterson house across the street where the president ultimately died. But what is truly haunting here is that while panic erupted in these specific rooms, a massive, dark web of co-conspirators was already fracturing across the capital city to aid an assassin's escape. While history so often focuses entirely on the men in that state box, the theater's orbit was actually filled with inspiring, entrepreneurial women experiencing the crisis firsthand. Laura Keene, a trailblazing actress and theater manager, was right in the thick of the chaos. You have figures like Elizabeth Keckley, and even Kate Warren, a pioneering female private detective working in the era's intelligence networks. But we really have to contrast these brave women with the shadowy figures actively working against the nation that very same night, women like Mary Surratt, whose seemingly ordinary Washington boarding house actually served as the treacherous incubator for the entire assassination plot. Because the original historical investigation led by Detective McDevitt wasn't just about examining Ford's theater. It was about tearing away the veil on a sprawling, multi-layered conspiracy. By retracing McDevitt's investigative steps, we uncover the chilling details of John Wilkes Booth's desperate 12-day escape route into the swamps of Maryland and Virginia. McDevitt's relentless hunt exposed a deeply coordinated shadow operation. It revealed Mary Surratt providing weapons and safe harbor. It uncovered Dr. Samuel Mudd, who infamously set Booth's broken leg, allowing the assassin to keep running. It detailed the brutal simultaneous knife attack on the Secretary of State by co-conspirator Lewis Powell, all while David Harold guided Booth through the wilderness. This was never just a lone wolf acting in a vacuum. It was a massive network of helpers that investigators had to painstakingly dismantle, clue by clue, day by day. Which brings us to our final section, Part 4, Deception in World War II, the hidden layers of global conflict. If the Revolutionary War relied on localized spies and the Civil War exposed domestic conspiracy networks, World War II fully industrialized the art of shadows. This global conflict wasn't just won by the highly visible tanks, ships, and planes. It was driven by invisible engines, deep espionage, elaborate grand-scale deception campaigns, and the relentless, grueling work of code breaking. These covert tactics were the secret lifeblood of the war effort, operating entirely out of sight yet absolutely dictating where and when the massive armies would finally meet on the battlefield. Just looking at this timeline, you realize that behind every grand battle was a high-stakes shadow war of broken codes and fiercely guarded intelligence. In 1941, the surprise attack on Pearl Harbor was a massive intelligence failure that thrust America into the war, while Operation Barbarossa saw the devastating invasion of the Soviet Union. But as the war progressed into 1942, with the Allied invasion of North Africa in Operation Torch and the incredibly deadly siege of Stalingrad, the Allies began to really master the weaponization of intercepted information. Cracking enemy ciphers meant commanders knew exactly where Axis supply lines were vulnerable before a single shot was fired. They even created entire phantom armies out of inflatable tanks and fake radio chatter to deceive the enemy about invasion targets. Millions of lives were saved and lost, based entirely on who was winning this invisible war of information. So, framing history as an ongoing investigation reminds us that it is never just what is on the surface. Whether we're talking about the brilliant alter egos of our founding fathers, the cutting-edge DNA sequencing of a lost teenage soldier, the sprawling escape network of a presidential assassination, or the codebreakers of World War II, the absolute crucial takeaway here is that history is a dynamic, living puzzle. The accepted narrative you read in a textbook? That's really just the starting point. Every single time we find a new diary, crack a forgotten code, or map a new genome, the picture of the past shifts and deepens in incredible ways. I hope this explainer sparked your curiosity to look a little closer, because the next massive historical breakthrough might just be hiding in plain sight. Keep questioning the surface narrative, keep looking for those alter egos and hidden figures, and remember that history is an investigation that is far from over. So I'll leave you with this. What other secrets are waiting to be uncovered?